The first thing June Morrison remembered about that day was the heat, thick, unmoving air that hung in the pines like wet wool. It had been the hottest July on record, and even the birds seemed to have gone silent. The forest behind their North Carolina holiday home, usually filled with the buzz of insects and the soft rustle of deer through the underbrush, felt unnervingly still. Emma and Sophie had been playing in the tall grass at the edge of the clearing, barefoot, their hair sticking to their cheeks as they chased each other in dizzy circles. Sophie, 7, was already the mother hen, directing Emma, who was 4 and full of boundless, sticky energy. June could still see them, Emma's curls bouncing as she ran, Sophie's gingham dress flaring as she twirled, trying to show her little sister had a cartwheel. She'd turned her back for no more than 10 minutes. Maybe 15. The details of that moment had haunted her for 14 years. The way Marcus had helped her load the cooler into the trunk, the way she'd reached for the leftover sandwiches with one hand while balancing the trash bag with the other, the way they both returned to the picnic blanket, still covered in sun-warmed plates and juice boxes, but empty. The silence at first. They called out like parents do, half laughing, half serious, "Sophie, Emma, time to pack up." But the laughter drained quickly. The clearing remained empty. Within an hour, the police were there. By nightfall, so were the dogs. They searched. For weeks, helicopters, thermal imaging, volunteers from every nearby county combing the dense forest, but nothing. Not a footprint, not a shred of fabric, not even a single lost shoe. It was as if the earth had swallowed them, and eventually, everyone stopped calling. The search teams thinned. Leads dried up. The house fell silent. The only thing that remained was the crushing ache in June's chest and the photo on the mantel. The last one taken of the girls, both squinting in the summer sun. Emma grinning with her stuffed rabbit, Sophie leaning slightly forward as if she were about to run. Then, 11 years later, Mike Garrett walked into the forest with a metal detector and a camera strapped to his chest. He was an amateur treasure hunter, more YouTuber than archaeologist, known for posting clickbait titles like "Colonial Coins Found in Grandpa's Backyard" or "Revolutionary War Musket Under Oak Tree." His latest video was supposed to be the same kind of harmless fluff. But the beeping near an ancient oak behind the Morrison family's old picnic site turned frantic. The digital screen spiked, 99 flashing red, and Mike's face went from smug to puzzled. He'd expected silver, a coin. Maybe a rusted old horseshoe. What he unearthed instead was a stainless steel thermos bottle, weather-worn but unmistakably childlike. Butterfly stickers still clung to its sides, their colors dulled by time. Mike had turned the object over in his hands, confusion slowly dawning as he spotted what looked like tooth fragments near the base of the shallow pit. He hadn't even posted the video. He called the police instead. By the next morning, June's phone was ringing, 14 years after that awful July. She was staring down a detective named Harrison in a small conference room of the Forest County Station. A sealed evidence box sat on the table between them. June felt her limbs go numb the moment the lid was removed. Inside, the thermos. Crumpled pieces of green gingham fabric. And bones. The dental records confirmed what June already knew in her heart. The remains belonged to Sophie, the girl who had once refused to share her special thermos because Emma made everything sticky. The one who'd made up a song to sing in the car. The one who clutched her sister's hand whenever they crossed the street. Now she was just bone fragments in a dress that no longer fit anyone. June remembered very little about what happened next. The conference room, the voices, the long drive back to the holiday house she hadn't entered in over a decade. Marcus's hand gripping hers the whole way, his knuckles white. That first night, she wandered the rooms like a ghost. The air inside, the house was heavy with time. Family pictures still hung on the hallway wall, one of the girls in Santa hats, another of Emma holding a sand bucket on the beach. The kitchen still had Emma's crayon drawings on the fridge. They looked like they might flutter to the floor if someone exhaled too hard. June slept in Sophie's old bed, though slept was the wrong word. She lay awake until dawn, heart racing, every shadow outside the window a potential answer, or Threat. Detective Harrison came by the next morning. His tone was gentle but resolute. "This is no longer a missing person case, Mrs. Morrison. It's a homicide." And with that, everything changed. The search began again. But this time, they weren't looking for two little girls playing hide-and-seek. They were looking for a killer. Someone who had taken both children and buried one in the forest. Someone who knew the area. Someone who'd possibly walked alongside the search teams, handed out bottled water to volunteers, helped staple missing posters to trees. "We're reopening every interview from the original investigation," Harrison explained. "Anyone who was near that picnic site that day, they're back on the list." The family returned to the holiday home in waves. Cousins, aunts, Marcus's sister from Raleigh, old friends who had once brought casseroles in those awful first weeks. The house swelled with people again, voices, maps, laptops, boxes of old photographs, lists of volunteers. June's brother Daniel arrived late that afternoon, driving 6 hours straight from his job in Charlotte. He had always been the favorite uncle, funny, overly generous, always down on the floor playing cards. With the girls, in photos, he was always lifting one of them up or blowing raspberries on someone's cheek. He'd seemed broken when they vanished more than the rest, somehow. After Sophie was confirmed dead, he showed up with a cooler full of drinks and a promise to help. "We'll find Emma," he told June. "We have to." But there was something in his eyes, something that flickered too fast. The community came out in force for the renewed effort. Local stores donated food and supplies. Old search dogs were brought back in. Drone operators volunteered to map the terrain. And of course there was Park Ranger Tom Mitchell, the man who'd been on duty the day the girls vanished. He'd organized the original volunteer grid. He was also, as June vividly recalled, the last adult to admit seeing Sophie and Emma alive. She hadn't liked him then, and she liked him even less now. He was too involved, too precise, too interested in their routines. What time they usually arrived at the forest, where they liked to picnic. What kind of snacks they brought, and now, just as before, Mitchell was steering people away from the northern section of the woods, claiming unstable ground. Abandoned mining shafts, a risk of landslides. But June remembered hiking there with the girls. It had been nothing but dense trees and the mossy rocks Sophie loved to climb. When she raised her concerns with Harrison, the detective was diplomatic. "Unless there's specific misconduct, I can't restrict Mitchell from helping," he said. "But I'll keep an eye on him." The next morning, Daniel volunteered for one of the northern quadrants. "I used to do mountaineering," he said casually. "Let me take the rough terrain." Mitchell objected immediately. "That section's too dangerous. You'd need climbing gear." "I'll take my chances," Daniel replied, smiling coolly. Something passed between them then, not quite hostility, but not camaraderie either. The search moved forward. Teams combed the woods, drones mapped the ridges. The heat returned, with a vengeance, clinging to skin and lungs. June stayed near the command center most of the time, helping coordinate supplies. Still, she kept watching Daniel. He disappeared for long stretches, made frequent supply runs into town. And one day, while June was loading up on water and snacks at the pharmacy, she saw him. Daniel was there too. His cart filled not with standard supplies, but with strange bulk items. Industrial-strength rope, padlocks, medical gauze, feminine hygiene products, protein bars. Too much of everything? Enough to stock a small shelter. When she asked about it, he laughed it off, donating to a women's shelter. "They're running low," but June had never known Daniel to volunteer for anything. And when she pressed further, his smile faltered. She followed him outside, watched him shove the bags into his black SUV. Through the open hatch, she caught a glimpse of more supplies. Bleach, duct tape, plastic sheeting. Her stomach turned. That night she didn't sleep. The next morning she told Marcus. Told him about the receipts, the bunker their father had built decades ago on the edge of Daniel's property, a relic from the Cold War. Daniel had always claimed he'd sealed it years ago, but now she wasn't so sure. We need to talk to him, June said. Today. They agreed to visit after breakfast, but Marcus never got the chance. Police called him in unexpectedly. Something about new evidence related to his former office. Connection they didn't explain. They needed him alone. So June went by herself. It was supposed to be just a conversation. She never expected what she'd find in Daniel's house, the receipts, the scattered lies, the bunker hidden beneath the trees, and she never imagined that when she finally opened that rusted metal door, she'd hear a voice from inside, soft, confused, and heartbreakingly familiar. Uncle Danny? Who's that lady? I don't like strangers. Was Emma older, thinner, confused, but alive? She was in there, still in there. June opened her mouth to call out, to scream, to cry, but a hand grabbed her from behind. Tight, cold, and the knife pressed against her ribs told her everything. The sound of the bunker door locking above her was final metal grinding into metal. The clank of the heavy padlock echoing through the underground chamber like a death knell. June's heart pounded in her throat. She stood frozen at the base of the concrete stairs, eyes adjusting to the low glow of battery-powered LED strips that barely illuminated the space. The air was cool and damp. It smelled of mold, antiseptic, and something else. Something sour, human. The walls were unfinished, concrete, stained in places, and covered in faint, jagged lines she couldn't quite make out. A chemical toilet sat in one corner, surrounded by haphazard stacks of canned food and gallon jugs of water. Along one wall was a narrow bed with a thin mattress and what looked like leather restraints looped through its metal frame, and in the far corner, huddled on a pile of threadbare blankets. Thin arms wrapped around her knees was Emma. June's knees gave out. The girl, no, not a girl anymore. A young woman. Maybe 18, but impossibly small. Tangled brown hair hanging around a face too pale for someone who lived above. She looked up at June with eyes that were wide and frightened and distant all at once. "Who are you?" the girl whispered. Her voice was high and breathy, like a child's. Uncle Danny said not to talk to strangers. June crawled forward, sobs already choking her throat. "Emma," she whispered. "Baby, it's me. It's Mom." "Oh my God, Emma." Emma recoiled violently, pressing herself harder into the corner. "You're not my mom," she said in a sing-song voice. "My mom's gone. Uncle Danny says the world is dangerous and you're a dream. Trick. People who come here aren't real. You'll go away." "No, sweetie," June said, trying to keep her voice level. "I'm real. I've been looking for you for 14 years. I thought you were." She couldn't say the word. Dead. Emma blinked slowly, processing. Her eyes darted to the stairwell. "Uncle Danny doesn't like when I talk to dreams." There was a loud bang above them, then silence. Daniel was pacing. June pressed a hand to her chest, forcing herself to breathe. She needed to think. Every instinct screamed for her to run, to fight, but she couldn't do anything reckless. Not with Emma like this. Not in this space. Not while Daniel was just above them with a key to the only door. She had to survive. Had to get Emma out. Had to be smart. "I'm not going to hurt you," June whispered, inching closer. "I promise. Just want to take you somewhere safe." Emma shook her head. "Safe is here. The forest is bad." "That's where Sophie went." Her voice faltered. "Sophie cried too much. Uncle Danny said that's why she had to leave." The air in June's lungs vanished. Her mind spiraled. June hadn't seen Sophie's body. Just bones, bits of cloth, that thermos. She'd clung to the possibility that maybe, somehow, it had been someone else, that Emma had survived. Sophie had been taken somewhere else, but now the truth thudded into her. Sophie had been here, too, and now she was gone. "Did you see what happened to Sophie?" June asked, her voice shaking. Emma stared at her hands. She didn't like the rules. Uncle Danny said she was spoiled. She screamed and scratched and tried to run. He said it was for the best. That she was too old, too loud. June wanted to scream. Instead, she clutched her daughter's hand. Emma flinched but didn't pull away. A small mercy. The bunker door opened again. Light flooded down, blinding after the dim glow. Daniel appeared in the doorway, carrying something large in blue plastic tarp, the kind used in construction. Over his shoulder was a coil of yellow rope. His face was blank, efficient. "Time to go," he said, as though they were heading out for errands. "We're going to the forest." Emma perked up. "Are we going to see the birds? You promised we could see the birds one day?"
Yes.
"Right," Daniel said, smiling gently at her. "Just like I promised." June surged to her feet, stepping between them. "You're not taking her." Daniel's face hardened. "You always meddled. You always ruined everything. Back then you couldn't even keep an eye on your kids. 10 minutes, June. That's all it took. You handed them to me on a silver platter. You took them," June whispered. "You watched them grow up and decided they were yours. She was better off here." He exploded. "You and Marcus would have ruined them. The world would have ruined them. Saved her. By locking her underground for 14 years? Daniel's hand twitched toward the knife at his belt. June's eyes darted to the concrete floor. She had to get to that knife. She had to stall. "Emma," he said, beckoning. "Come to Uncle Danny." Emma stood obediently. She took one step. June lunged. She hit Daniel in the ribs with everything she had. He stumbled, the tarp slipping from his arms, the knife clattering to the floor. June dove for it. He recovered quickly, too quickly, but she had the blade in her hand now. She swung wildly, forcing him back up the stairs. Emma cowered against the wall. June screamed, "Run!" But Emma didn't move. She just covered her ears. Above them, Daniel bolted out of the bunker and slammed the door shut. The lock clicked. Again, June turned to Emma, panting. "We have to get out." "He's going to kill us," Emma whimpered. "I'm not supposed to leave. Only bad girls leave." "You're not bad," June said, grabbing her arm. "You're my daughter." Coming home. She reached for the tarp and quickly looped it around Emma's shoulders like a shawl. "Come on, we'll find another way." But there was no other way. No hidden exit. No emergency hatch. Its concrete walls were too thick for a signal. No phone, no reception. There's no way out. Unless someone came looking. June helped Emma back to the bed and sat beside her, knife clutched tight in her hand. Time passed. She had no idea how long. Then dash sirens. In the distance at first, then louder, closer, the metallic squeal of tires on gravel. Voices. June screamed as loud as she could, slamming her hand on the metal walls. "Down here, she's here. Emma's alive." Moments later, the padlock was rattling. A crowbar. The door swung open. Light. Gunlight. Flashlights. Shadows moving fast. Then a face she recognized. "Detective Harrison." He called for paramedics. June clung to his arm. "She's alive. She's alive. But she doesn't remember. He took her. He kept her here for years." Emma stood frozen on the steps, squinting into the light. "Uncle Danny said we were going to see the birds." The paramedics moved gently, slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. Emma allowed them to touch her, but flinched at every unfamiliar voice. Outside, June collapsed to the ground, the fresh air stinging her lungs. Marcus's car screeched into the driveway. He had heard everything on the scanner. He ran to them, pulling Emma into his arms. She didn't know him. She didn't pull away. That night, in the hospital, under sedation and observation, Emma clung to one thing. The song. June sang it softly beside her bed. The same lullaby from so long ago about mockingbirds and silver, rings and diamond skies. Emma's fingers twitched in response. Just a reflex. Maybe or something deeper, a memory fighting its way to the surface. When June reached the chorus, Emma whispered, "The lady in my dreams sings that song." And then her voice trailed off into sleep. June held her hand and sang it again and again until morning came, and hope, for the first time in 14 years, didn't feel like a lie. The hospital lights hummed faintly overhead, casting a pale, sterile glow across the walls that made everything feel frozen in time. June hadn't moved from the chair beside Emma's bed in hours. Her legs were numb, her hands sore from holding. On to her daughters, as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. Because it was Emma slept now, sedated after a long, agonizing intake session with psychiatric specialists, trauma doctors, and investigators. A nurse had gently explained that sedation wasn't about control, it was about preventing total psychological collapse. Emma's responses had become erratic after just a few minutes of questioning. She would speak in sing-song, then suddenly flinch, curl into a ball, or begin crying without sound. But the most terrifying moments were when she was utterly still. Eyes open, but empty. Dr. Meera Patel, a trauma psychologist flown in that morning, had given June a quiet but devastating assessment. Your daughter is deeply conditioned. She's been programmed, likely for years. Her language, her behaviors, her understanding of identity, it's all been rewritten. Her mind protected her the only way it could. Marcus stood near the window, arms folded, eyes glassy. The first hour. After they brought Emma in, he hadn't spoken at all. Just kept looking at her, this tooth-and-pale young woman with the same lips as Sophie, the same freckle beneath her left eye, the same small hands that used to squeeze his fingers when she was scared. I don't know who she is anymore, Marcus said quietly. She looks like Emma, but she doesn't know me. Doesn't even blink when I talk. June nodded without looking at him. She's in there. I know she is. They had seen it, both of them. At flicker when June had hummed the lullaby. The tightening of Emma's fingers. The momentary pause in her breath. Then we find her, Marcus said. No matter how long it takes. A knock at the door pulled them both upright. Detective Harrison entered, his suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept, and June didn't blame him. They had captured Daniel less than 12 hours ago, and now there were mountains to climb. We've got him talking, Harrison said. He's trying to bargain information in exchange for a life sentence instead of death. June bristled. You're not actually considering it, are you? Harrison hesitated. We're documenting everything, every word. But we need to hear him out. He's giving us details we never would have found otherwise. Like what? Harrison rubbed his face and pulled a small notebook from his coat. He's confessed to everything. Says he didn't plan it. At least not at first. That day in the forest, he said it felt like fate. June swallowed the bile rising in her throat. He said he watched them playing in the grass. You and Marcus were loading the car. He told the girls you'd sent him, that you needed help packing up. Promised them ice cream. Marcus sat down hard in the plastic chair near the door. Of course they went, June whispered. He was family. They were both taken to the bunker, Harrison continued. We'd already been preparing its supplies, restraints, everything. He says it started as a what-if, just a fantasy. But when the opportunity came, he acted. Without hesitation, June stared at her sleeping daughter. What happened to Sophie? Harrison's expression darkened. She resisted, cried. For you, tried to escape. After about 4 months, he claims he couldn't keep her quiet anymore. One day, while he was at work, she broke the bunker lock and made it to the forest. He found her before anyone else could. Marcus's hands balled into fists. He says he panicked, hit her with a rock. Didn't mean to kill her, but Harrison looked down at his notes. Then he buried her, near your old picnic spot. Said he chose the location deliberately. June stiffened. Deliberately? He wanted her to be found. Eventually, thought it would give closure. That if the body was discovered, the case would be closed, and no one would keep looking for Emma. Marcus stood. So he used her death as cover, like she was bait. He even placed the thermos near the body, Harrison added quietly. To ensure identification, the room fell into suffocating silence. Where is he now? Marcus asked. In the county jail, Harrison replied. Surveillance, suicide watch. He won't be out. Good, June said flatly. He doesn't. Get a painless ending. Dr. Patel entered a moment later, gently excusing herself as she approached Emma's bed. She checked vitals, made a few notes, then turned to June. She's stable. Her responses are consistent with prolonged captivity and emotional manipulation. We're going to take this hour by hour. Can we talk to her? June asked Patel. Hesitated. Not yet, not questions at least. But you can be here. She needs to feel safe more than she needs answers. What can we do? Routine, Patel said. Familiarity. Lullabies, smells, voices. Don't force her to remember. Let it come to her. That night, June curled up beside her daughter, stroking her hair and humming softly. She sang, "Hush, little baby, then you are my sunshine." The same two songs she used to rotate when Emma was 4 and restless. Emma didn't speak. But she didn't pull away, and when Marcus returned with Sophie's old stuffed rabbit worn, stitched up, and long boxed away, Emma reached for it in her sleep. They stayed in the hospital for 3 days. On the 4th morning, Harrison returned with another revelation. "We found evidence Daniel had planned to relocate her," he said. "He bought tarps, shovels, bleach. Same day you caught him at the pharmacy, he was going to kill her." That night, June's stomach dropped. He was done with her. He said she'd aged out, that she was no longer what he wanted. Marcus stared at the wall. He kept her like a pet. And when she wasn't what he wanted anymore, he was going to put her down. He used that exact phrasing. That night, June didn't sleep at all. She sat at Emma's bedside and tried to piece together 14 years of what-ifs, of missed signs, of family dinners where Daniel had smiled too much, hugged too tightly, brought the girls too many gifts. And in the morning, when Emma finally opened her eyes and whispered, "Is it morning?" June felt something crack and light pour through. "Yes, baby," she said, her voice catching. "It's morning." Emma looked around the room. Her eyes passed over Marcus, the machines, the IV lines, then landed on June. "I had a dream," she whispered. "There was a lady. She was singing. She smelled like flowers." June gripped her hand. "That was me, sweetheart." Emma blinked slowly. "I think I know you," she said. And for the first time, June allowed herself to cry. The first time Emma called her mom again happened by accident. They were leaving the hospital 2 weeks after her rescue. June had been crouching by the passenger seat of the car, buckling the belt gently across Emma's chest. Marcus was loading the trunk with the few belongings they'd gathered: a fresh pair of clothes from Target, a stuffed rabbit Sophie once loved, a plastic storage tub full of paperwork and prescriptions. Dr. Patel stood just beyond the parking lot, clipboard in hand, nodding gently in approval. They'd insisted Emma not be moved to a residential trauma facility, not yet. The doctors had agreed to release her to June and Marcus under strict guidelines: in-home psychiatric care, daily check-ins, and the ongoing presence of a trauma specialist for at least 6 months. Emma had sat quietly in the seat, arms crossed tight against her stomach, her shoulders perpetually hunched. She stared forward, barely blinking, her skin nearly translucent under the shade of the car roof. The seatbelt clicked into place, and June adjusted it softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "There," she said. "Nice and snug. Let me know if it feels too tight, okay?" Emma didn't move. Then, as June backed away and closed the car door, she heard it through the glass. "Thanks, Mom." June froze. She wasn't sure if she'd heard it correctly. She turned wide-eyed to Marcus, who had stopped mid-step, with the trunk lid half closed. His eyes were glassy. It didn't matter that Emma didn't say it again for another 6 days. The crack in the wall had begun. The holiday home had changed. Not in structure, it still stood with its weathered siding, wraparound porch, and creaky floorboards, but in mood. What had once been a graveyard of memories had become something else: a hospital, sanctuary, a battlefield. Marcus stayed downstairs most days, managing logistics. Harrison had warned them the media attention would be relentless once news broke that Emma Morrison had been found alive after 14 years underground. So far, the press had only reported that new evidence had been found in the Morrison disappearance case. Harrison had sworn the leak didn't come from his department, but June knew how these things worked. It was only a matter of time inside. June kept the world small, quiet, predictable. Emma had been set up in the bedroom she once shared with Sophie. They left the walls untouched, the faded butterfly decals, the pink-framed corkboard, the bookshelf half filled with old paperbacks, and coloring books. Emma didn't comment on any of it. She didn't seem to recognize the space, but she didn't reject it either. That alone was a win. The room's old twin bed had been replaced with a hospital-style adjustable frame. A nurse Talia came in from Asheville every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, bringing with her a gentle voice and an ocean of patience. By the end of the first week, Emma allowed her to brush her hair. That was the second breakthrough. The third came the day she asked for a snack. June had nearly dropped the tray in her hands. Something cold, Emma whispered, eyes on the floor. And sweet. June brought her a bowl of strawberry ice cream with sprinkles, the kind Sophie used to request on birthdays. Emma stared at it for a long time before finally dipping a spoon in, 3 slow bites. Then she set it down. That night, Marcus whispered across the hallway to June's door. "She's eating." "I know," June whispered back. "I saw." They didn't say anything else. Words were too fragile. But nothing stayed fragile for long. It began. It's always with a knock. June had just finished wiping down the kitchen counters when Marcus answered the front door. There was murmuring, shuffling, and then Harrison's voice, calm, clipped, serious. "Daniel wants to see you." June dropped the sponge into the sink. They met at the county detention center 2 days later. June insisted on going alone. Marcus objected. She ignored him. "He's mine to face," she said. "It's not yours." She wore no makeup, pulled her hair into a bun, dressed in black. Not mourning, but armor. The visitation room was colorless. Cinder block echo chamber with a long glass wall down the middle and a telephone on each side. Daniel entered wearing orange, his wrists cuffed to a chain at his waist. He looked ordinary, little thinner, eyes slightly sunken, but not monstrous. And that, more than anything, was infuriating. He sat, picked up the phone. June didn't move. He nodded toward the receiver on her side. "Please," he mouthed. She lifted it slowly and held it without speaking. Daniel smiled. The same easy grin that had once disarmed every relative at Thanksgiving. "Thank you for coming," he said. June said nothing. "I figured you'd want answers." "I don't want anything from you," she said coldly. "But if there's something the police need, I'll listen." For Emma, Daniel tilted his head. "She's okay?" "Which is surviving, which is more than I can say for Sophie." His smile faded. "I didn't want," June snapped. "You don't get to say what you wanted. You don't get to want anything." Daniel stared at her. Then, softly, "You weren't supposed to find her." June blinked. He continued, "Sophie, I buried her near the oak for a reason. I knew that Thermos would get picked up someday. By then, the case would have gone cold. Everyone would think she'd wandered, that Emma died too. Never thought a damn YouTuber would change everything. Are you bragging?" June asked, fury rising in her throat. "No," Daniel said, his expression suddenly vacant. "I'm saying I was careful, for her. I kept Emma safe. You don't know what could have happened to her out there. All those cases girls taken and thrown away, left in ditches. But I gave her everything. Took her life." June spat. "You stole her name. You rewrote her mind." "She loved me," Daniel whispered. "No, she didn't," June said, voice trembling. "You forced her too. And she's coming back now every day." Daniel looked shaken for the first time. "She remembers." "She will." The guards came then, announcing the end of visitation. June stood. She looked at him once more. "You will die in here," she said. "Alone, forgotten. And every time she calls me Mom, that's another inch of ground you'll never get back." Dropped the phone and walked away. Back at the house. June didn't speak for hours. She sat on the porch, drinking tea, watching the trees sway. Emma joined her near dusk, wrapped in a knit blanket, her bare feet silent on the porch boards. June looked at her. "Want to sit?" Emma nodded. Curled into the chair beside her, they sat in silence for a long time. Then Emma spoke. Voice low, like a secret. Uncle Danny said the birds in the forest would sing to us, that they liked me because I was quiet. June's hand trembled around her teacup, but sometimes, Emma continued, I heard other birds, scared ones, ones that sounded like they were calling for help. Those were real birds, June said gently. So were you. Emma nodded slowly, then almost too softly to hear, I don't want to be a bird anymore. June reached over and took her hand. You don't have to. They watched the sun set together, and June swore she saw color returning to her daughter's cheeks. June had started keeping a journal again. Not the polished kind. It's not the type meant for grief counselors or therapists or articles about navigating trauma as a parent. It was raw, scribbled in ballpoint pen in a lined spiral notebook she found in Sophie's old desk drawer, purple cover, frayed edge, a few faded stickers still on the back. Every night. Once Emma had fallen asleep and the house was quiet, June wrote until her hand cramped. Day 22. Emma asked me if clouds are real. It's not as a joke. She genuinely wasn't sure. Said Uncle Danny told me clouds were a story people made up when they got lonely. I told her we'd sit outside tomorrow and name shapes in them. We did. Day 24. She touched Marcus's arm today and didn't flinch. He cried in the hallway afterward. I didn't stop him. Day 27. She said Sophie's name. She didn't say it like she remembered her exactly, more like she remembered that Sophie existed. She said Sophie was the one with the big ideas. And then she cried, I just held her and didn't say anything. There's nothing to say outside the house. Life didn't pause. Detective Harrison had warned them that the story would break wide any day. And it did, first as a local radio blip. Then an online article titled, Breaking, Missing Morrison Girl Found Alive After 14 Years, Uncle in Custody, and then it spread like fire. Within 24 hours, their mailbox overflowed. Letters from strangers, news vans parked at the edge of the property line. Microphones shoved through hedges. One journalist tried to send a drone over the back fence. That same afternoon, Marcus built a 10-foot privacy wall along the western edge of the yard. June didn't read the letters. Not yet, but she saved every one in a box marked for her someday. 'Cause one day, Emma would need to know that. The world believed her. For now, Emma's world was still measured in inches. She didn't leave the house. She didn't talk on the phone. She rarely spoke, unless spoken to. But the gaps between words were slowly shortening. Talia, the visiting nurse, began bringing art supplies in quiet, nonchalant ways, pastels one day, watercolors the next. She never asked Emma to use them. She just left them on the table. One day, Emma did. It was a cloud, lumpy, pale, sitting above what might have been a field. June hung it on the fridge like it was the Mona Lisa. But recovery was not linear. The bad nights were like free falls. Emma would wake screaming, sometimes sobbing, sometimes trying to peel her skin off. She clawed at her arms. She screamed for someone to turn off the walls or stop the numbers from blinking. One night, she whispered over and over, no more days, please. No more days. Marcus would hold her, tears silent down his cheeks. June would sit at the foot of the bed, humming, rocking, reading old storybooks in a shaking voice. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it did. One night, Emma locked herself in the bathroom for 4 hours and refused to speak. When they finally got her out, she just said, I saw Sophie in the mirror. June and Marcus held her all night. Week 5 brought a new kind of chaos. Detective, Harrison called from his office early one morning. You should sit down for this, said. June gripped the counter. There's another property. She blinked. What? A second bunker. Smaller. Less developed. On land Daniel bought under a shell company 5 years ago. We found it by tracing cash purchases and cross-referencing utility spikes. It's in the next county over. June's heart pounded. Is it another victim? We're not sure yet. The team's en route now. I wanted you to hear it from me, not the news. Are there signs someone's been there recently? Possibly. There's heat signatures. June's mind whirled. Said Emma was his special girl, that he'd kept her perfect. Are you saying there could be someone else? We don't know, but we're treating it as a live scene. I'm coming, June. You're not stopping me. Harrison sighed. Figured you'd say that. Marcus didn't want her to go. Emma didn't ask questions. Just watched June pack with her arms wrapped tightly around her rabbit. Talia stayed at the house, and June promised she'd call every hour. The drive to the second bunker was quiet. Harrison in the passenger seat, occasionally pointing out detours around news vans and parked sheriff's cruisers. When they arrived, the property was heavily cordoned off crime scene tape, deputies, floodlights. It was a wooded lot with a single padlocked shed in the center. June recognized the layout instantly. Same concrete foundation, same narrow hatch partially hidden under leaves, same locking mechanism. As they descended the stairs, the smell hit her different. From the first bunker, less antiseptic, more amp, fungal. But this one was empty. Mostly there were signs of habitation. A mattress on the floor, a pile of canned food, a child's drawing tacked to the wall, stick figures holding hands beneath. A blue sky. In the corner, a calendar had been drawn in marker, counting down what appeared to be days since arrival. But no one was there. "We think someone escaped," Harrison said quietly. "Recently." June turned to him, another girl, unconfirmed. Found strands of long hair on the mattress, single pink sock, a small plastic necklace with beads spelling out Tina. Harrison said nothing, but his face said everything. Back home, June couldn't sleep. Emma was curled beside her. Breathing softly, she looked more peaceful than she had in days. But June stared at the ceiling and thought of Tina, of calendars, and traps, of all the girls the world never found, of how close Emma had come to being one of them forever, and of how many more were still out there waiting in dark rooms. Counting down days, believing the world had forgotten them, June got up. Quietly, she pulled the notebook from the nightstand drawer. She opened it to a fresh page and wrote, "Day 35, there's more. I can feel it." He wasn't finished. Maybe he never would have been. But we are. We're going to finish this for every girl still lost in the dark. Then she walked back to bed, held Emma close, and whispered a lullaby into the quiet night. The search for Tina ignited something in the country. For 2 weeks, the phrase "second Morrison bunker" trended on every platform, every news channel, every podcast. The image of the stick figure drawing recovered from the concrete wall 3. Faceless shapes beneath a bright blue scribble of sky was plastered on cable news graphics, like a national symbol of grief. It was different this time. Not a cold case, not bones in the woods. This was a child who might still be alive, and America had learned from Emma. They believed Tina was real. June watched the frenzy unfold from the living room couch. Emma beside her, wrapped in a soft gray blanket, her eyes wide but steady. She never asked questions about the media coverage, but June saw her watching, always watching. She seemed especially drawn to the coverage of Daniel's trial, so they muted the volume whenever his name came up. Dr. Patel had warned them. This was normal. Trauma survivors often watch their own stories unfold with detachment, she explained. It gives them power. Distance. Let her. June let her. Sometimes Emma would stand near the screen for long minutes, head tilted, just staring. Then she'd return to her room and draw more clouds, sometimes birds. Once she drew a picture of herself holding hands with someone's smaller stick figures, just like the one from the second bunker. But instead of 3 people, there were only 2. June didn't ask who the second figure was. She didn't need to. Emma had started, humming again. Not loudly, just a soft tune under her breath while she colored, while she brushed her hair, while she walked barefoot through the hallway, tracing her fingers along the wood paneling like it was Braille. It was the same song June had sung for her as a baby. The same lullaby that had broken through in the hospital room, and now it was surfacing again, note by note. Marcus kept busy building a case, not a legal one, an emotional one. Case for a future that felt like more than survival. He started fixing things in the house, repainting the porch, clearing brush from the tree line. He bought seeds for the garden Sophie had always wanted, but never got to plant. "I think we should stay here," told June one night, as they stood on the porch watching the sun slip behind the pines. "Not just for Emma, for us." June leaned into him. "This place used to feel like a grave." "Maybe it was, but now it's something else." She didn't respond. Just let the moment breathe. They stayed like that, arms around each other, until the sun was gone and the trees turned. Two shadows. On the 12th day after the discovery of the second bunker, Rassen called again. "You'll want to hear this in person." They met at the ranger station, a familiar place, now transformed into a permanent field headquarters. Maps lined the walls, evidence boards filled with timelines and surveillance images. Deputies and agents hunched over laptops and stacks of case files. The chaos was dense, urgent, focused. Harrison led her into a private conference room. He set a small recorder on the table and hit play at first. Nothing. Just silence. Then Daniel's voice. Tina was different. Quieter than Sophie. She didn't fight back. But she wasn't special like Emma. Didn't bond. "I thought I could try again. Start over. I bought the second place just in case. I only had her for 6 months. She escaped during a resupply trip. That's what I get for trusting the damn gate latch." June sat in stunned silence. Daniel's voice continued. "She had a head start. I think she hitched. She's out there. Somewhere I left a mark in case she ever came back." "A message?" "What message?" June asked. Harrison paused the tape. "That's why I called." He pulled a printout from a manila folder and slid it across the table. A photo, a tree oak, cracked with age near the property edge, carved into the bark, nearly invisible unless you knew what to look for. "Edie lives here. She's safe. R-U-E-D. June whispered. "Emma Danielson," Harrison said. The name he gave Emma in captivity. He might have told Tina the same. A threat, maybe, or a lure. June stared at the carving, nausea rising. He marked territory. "A hunter." "Exactly," Harrison said. "And there's more." He pulled another folder. We traced a pattern. Daniel had several cash withdrawals from an unregistered account over the last 6 years, all in different counties. Each aligns with a short-term cabin rental under various aliases. "How many?" 14. June went cold. "You think there could be more bunkers? More sites, at least?" "We don't know yet. The feds are opening a multi-jurisdictional investigation." And Tina Harrison hesitated. "No confirmed sightings. But we're following a lead near Asheville. A girl matching her description was seen sleeping behind a church last week. Volunteers are combing shelters, trailheads, anywhere someone could vanish." "She's alive," June said quietly. Harrison met her eyes. "We hope." When June got home, Emma was on the floor drawing again. This time it wasn't clouds. It was trees. A thick forest. Single figure crouched near a stream, holding what looked like a fishing rod. Beside her, a second figure, a child, was hiding behind a bush. June knelt beside her. "Can you tell me what that is?" Emma didn't look up. "Remember the sound of water? There was a place once with a stream. And a girl with dark hair. She didn't talk much. She was scared of him." June's breath caught. "Emma, do you remember her name?" Emma paused. Then slowly, "Tina." June swallowed. "You knew her?" "She was only there for a little while. Uncle Danny said she was broken. She didn't play the way I did." Emma's hand trembled. She dropped the crayon. "I think she ran away. He got so angry." June gathered her into her arms. "You're safe now. So is she. I believe that." Emma's voice was barely audible. "Will she remember me?" "I think so." But Emma didn't speak again that night. The next morning, when June brought her breakfast, she pointed to the drawing on the table. "I want to help find her." June blinked. "You do?" "She's alone," Emma said. "I know what that feels like." And just like that, something shifted again. Not a crack this time, but a door. Opening. The FBI agents arrived 2 days later. They set up camp in the ranger station, combining leads from 7 states. One of them, A young woman named Agent Kessler came to the house with Harrison to interview Emma. They kept it gentle, casual. They brought markers and maps and photos and asked Emma if anything looked familiar. She pointed to a trail in the Blue Ridge Mountains. "I think he took us there once. There was a big rock that looked like a face." Kessler lit up. "Do you remember what season?" "Summer," Emma said. The trees had bugs, loud ones. Cicadas, June thought. The agents left with the drawing and the trail name circled in red. Before they left, Harrison pulled June aside. "Whatever you've been doing," he said, "keep doing it. Emma's helping us in ways we never thought. Possible, she wants to find Tina. She might." That night, Emma sat on the porch beside June, knees pulled to her chest. "I used to think the world was just the bunker," she said. "Walls and rules and quiet, but the world is loud. I'm still learning it." "You're doing beautifully," June whispered. Emma nodded. "Do you think Sophie would have liked clouds?" June choked back tears. She would have loved them. She would have made stories out of every shape. Emma smiled faintly. "I think I will too." They sat in silence, watching the clouds drift overhead, painting stories in the sky. Behind them, the house was full of light. Ahead of them, the woods. Still held secrets, but this time, they weren't afraid of them. Not anymore. It was nearly midnight when the phone rang again. June sat upright in bed, instinct firing before awareness. Many people called the house line anymore, unless it was something urgent. Marcus stirred beside her, reaching groggily for the receiver. "Hello?" A pause. Then, "Yes. This is Marcus Morrison." He sat upright. June could hear the voice on the other end, now faint, hurried, female. "Agent Kessler." "Yes, she's here. Hold on." He passed the phone to June. "Kessler," she said, breathless. "We think we found her." A girl matching Tina's description turned up at a ranger station outside Cherokee. She gave no name. "But she's thin, about 11 years old, bruised, wearing a necklace that spells Tina. Same beads we found in the second bunker." June's heart stuttered. "She's alive?" "Looks like it. They're transporting her to a secure facility. In Asheville now? We haven't spoken to her yet, but she asked for Emma. Not by name. Just said the quiet girl with the birds." June pressed a hand to her mouth. "We want to bring Emma in," Kessler continued. "Not for questioning, just a presence, something safe. She may be the only person Tina remembers. I'll ask her," June whispered. "But I think she'll say yes." Emma didn't hesitate. She didn't cry, didn't freeze. She just looked at June and said, "She remembers me." It was the clearest her voice had sounded yet. They drove through the mountains at dawn, the clouds hanging low over the blue ridge like ghostly drapes. Facility in Asheville was quiet, tucked into a wooded compound with stone paths and small, soft-spoken nurses. It didn't feel like a hospital. It felt like a refuge. Kessler met them at the gate. She wore no suit. Jacket today, just jeans and a loose flannel shirt. Her hair was pulled into a braid. "She's in the observation wing," she said. Alert, calm, won't talk to the doctors. But she drew this. She handed June a folded paper. On it, 2 stick figures, sitting beneath a tree, a bird flying overhead. One figure had long brown hair. The other was smaller, curled inward. Cloud above her head drawn in blue crayon, she remembers. Emma said softly. Kessler led them through the security checkpoint and into the hallway. The lights were low, walls painted a gentle green. Nurses nodded as they passed. A doctor whispered something into Kessler's ear and handed her a clipboard. "She's awake," Kessler said. "But she's only been responsive when given paper and crayons. She hasn't spoken except to say she'll come." The girl with the songs. Emma turned to June. "Can I go in alone?" June hesitated. Kessler placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "We'll be right outside." June nodded. Emma stepped through the doorway, slowly like entering a cathedral. Inside, the room was quiet. A soft mattress, a tray of untouched food. And in the corner, half hidden under a fleece blanket, was Tina. She looked smaller than Emma remembered. Her hair was tangled, her limbs thin, face pale. But her eyes snapped up at the sound of the door. They didn't blink. Emma didn't speak. She stepped forward and sat on the floor, sat the bed. They stayed like that for nearly 10 minutes. Then Tina's hand crept out from under the blanket. Emma reached back, fingers curling gently around hers. Outside, Kessler watched through the observation window. "They're communicating," she whispered. "Not verbally, but it's there." June pressed her hand to the glass. Tina began to cry silent tears. Running down her cheeks, Emma reached over and brushed them away. Then she began to hum. Soft, low, familiar. The lullaby. Kessler wiped her eyes. My God. June exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. They let Emma stay in the room for 20 minutes. When she finally emerged, she looked older. Taller, somehow. Like someone who had walked into the past and returned carrying its weight. "She remembers everything," Emma said. "Not just the bad, the good too. We had secret names. She called me Bird. I called her Tree." June pulled her close. "She's going to be okay," Emma said, her voice breaking for the first time in weeks. "She's going to get out of the dark." June held her tighter. "So will you," she whispered. That evening, after they returned home, June found a new drawing on Emma's desk. It showed a bunker door wide open, 2 girls walking into sunlight. Behind them, a figure stood in shadows, small and alone, no longer chasing. June tucked the drawing into her notebook. Then she added a new entry. Day 43. Emma found her. And in doing so, found something in herself. This isn't the end. But maybe it's the start of healing. Of light, she hums now. She draws. She tells stories.
Oh.
Sophie would have been proud. I am. Tina remained at the Asheville facility for another 2 weeks. During that time, Emma visited 4 times. They never said much. Sometimes they just sat together, watching clouds through the window. Other times they colored in silence. But on the 5th visit, something changed. Tina spoke. She whispered to Emma, "He said we were pretend, but you made me feel real." Emma nodded. "We are." Daniel's trial date was set for November. The prosecutor called June personally. "He wants to plead guilty. No trial. Life without parole." June agreed. The idea of sitting through testimony, hearing every sick detail, was unbearable. Daniel Morrison would die in prison, unremarked, unmourned. But his story wouldn't be forgotten, not because of him, because of the girls who survived him. Emma and Tina. Bird and Tree. The press came back, of course, documentary. Crews. Interview requests. Book deals. June refused them all. She allowed one story to Runa. Long-form article by a local journalist who had covered the case from the beginning. It was titled, "One sister was buried in the forest, the other lived in a bunker." No one knew existed. It focused on Emma's recovery, on the discovery of Tina, on the quiet heroism of trauma survivors who learned to speak again, draw again, live again. The article ended with a quote from Emma. "We weren't lost. We were waiting. We're ready to come back." 1 week later, June opened the mailbox and found another envelope with no return address. Inside, a photo. A girl in a hoodie, sitting at a picnic table in some small-town park. A dog at her feet, a sandwich in her hand, a tiny smile. On the back, one sentence in messy child handwriting. "Tell Emma I saw a cloud shaped like a bird." June brought it inside, tears already spilling over. Emma was in the kitchen, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. June held up the photo. Emma took it with both hands and smiled. By late spring, the house on Hollow Birch Lane didn't feel like a mausoleum anymore. The windows were always open now. The breeze carried smells of earth and lavender and freshly turned soil. June had planted Sophie's garden after all rows of tomatoes, green beans, and sunflowers that tracked the sky from dawn to dusk. Emma helped. Quietly at first, then with slow, deliberate purpose. Each seed she pressed into the dirt felt like something symbolic, something hopeful. She never said as much, but June didn't need her to. Some days, Emma would kneel in the soil for hours, fingers caked in mud, her clothes speckled with flecks of green. She still didn't speak often, but she was present in a way she hadn't been before. Marcus had taken up woodworking again. His workshop, silent for more than a decade now, buzzed gently in the afternoons. He was building a bench to place at the edge of the woods, facing the trail where the girls had disappeared. Not a memorial, he'd said, a promise. Emma liked to sit near the bench while he worked, sketchbook on her knees, drawing pictures of the trees. She was still obsessed with branches, bark, and clouds. She said very little. But what she did say mattered. It was as if every word had weight now. One afternoon in late April, June found her sitting alone in the hallway, staring at a faded photograph. On the wall, one of the last taken of the girls together. Sophie's smile beamed bright, gummy, and wild. Emma, slightly smaller, stood half behind her sister. As if trying to disappear into the shadow of her bolder half, Emma reached up and touched the glass. "She protected me," she said. June sat beside her on the floor. She always did. Emma nodded. "She told me not to listen to him, said you'd come, that the world was bigger than the bunker." June blinked back tears. She was right. Emma looked at her. "I miss her." "I do too." They stayed like that for a long while. Tina was released into foster care under a protective identity. Emma hadn't seen her since the final visit in Asheville. They wrote letters encrypted, passed through Agent Kessler's office. They'd devised a system of symbols and sketches instead of words. One letter included only a drawing of two trees leaning together with their branches entwined. Emma kept that one taped above her bed. June watched these exchanges with something akin to awe, all the horror they'd endured. These girls, these children had found a way to reach across the abyss and hold on to something real. Connection, understanding, survival one day. Emma asked to go to the forest again. Not that part of the forest. Not where it happened. A new trail. Safer? June hesitated, but agreed. They went together, just the two of them. No press, no agents, no deputies parked nearby with radios crackling. Just mother and daughter. They walked in silence, Emma's hand never leaving June's bird song filtered down from the canopy. Sunlight danced through the leaves. Eventually they came to a clearing where a single oak tree stood wide. Ancient and steady, Emma let go of her hand and approached it slowly. She touched the bark. "Feels like her," she said. "Sophie." She always felt solid. June nodded. Heart tight, Emma turned and looked at her. "Can I leave something?" "Course." From her pocket, Emma pulled out a smooth stone painted with a bluebird on one side and a symbol on the other, two spirals joined at the base. She loved birds too. "And this means keep going." She placed the stone at the base of the tree, then stood in silence. June didn't speak, didn't cry. She simply stood beside her. Daughter, and felt the earth shift beneath her feet, something old loosening. Its grip, something new settling in. That evening, back at the house, June sorted through mail while Emma sat nearby reading a wrinkle-in-Tima book Sophie had once adored. June had never been able to open it before. The mail included another envelope from Agent Kessler. Inside, a photograph. This one showed Daniel Morrison in an orange jumpsuit, shackled, head down as he was escorted into federal prison. The caption read, "Inmate number 7,642,203, no bail. Life without parole." June tore it in half and fed it to the fire. Emma didn't ask who it was. She didn't need to. 1 week later, the garden bloomed. Sophie's sunflowers were the first to rise tall, proud, golden-faced. Marcus planted a bench beneath them, carved into the wood, to the light after the dark. Emma helped sand the edges. She didn't flinch when the power sander word, didn't panic when the stain soaked her hands. She just smiled and said, "It feels like something's finished." June squeezed her hand. "Something is," she said. But, in truth, something else had only just begun. That summer, small foundation was launched. The Sophie project started quietly by June and Marcus. It offered grants and emergency housing to survivors of long-term captivity and familial abuse. The first to apply was Tina's foster guardian, an older woman named Mrs. Haskins, who was trying to legally adopt her. June approved it in seconds. More applications followed, victims no one had heard of. Children who'd slipped through cracks and come out the other side gasping. June responded to each. One personally, not as a therapist, not even as a founder, but as a mother. On the anniversary of the girl's disappearance, 14 years to the day, June and Marcus hosted a small, private ceremony in the backyard. Just family, close friends, and a few of the officers and searchers who'd never given up. Emma spoke quietly, with her sketchbook open in her lap. She read a few lines of what she called a memory poem. We were birds in the dark waiting. For the sky to open, one flew away. The other grew wings from the sound of her name. She closed the notebook, and there wasn't a dry eye left. Later, as dusk settled and fireflies began to flicker in the grass, June sat on the new bench, the garden blooming behind her, her daughter safe beside her. Emma leaned her head on her shoulder. Do you think she knows? Sophie, June asked. Emma nodded. June looked up at the stars. I think she never stopped watching. Emma smiled. I hope she sees the garden. She does. They stayed like that for a long time, the air warm, the night quiet. The past folded gently into the present, and beneath them, the earth no longer held secrets, only roots. Summer turned into fall slowly that year. The days grew shorter, but the air remained warm and soft, the kind of lingering heat that stretched time and made the garden bloom longer than it had any right to. Emma had begun to wake with the sun. Her mornings marked by rituals that once would have sent her spiraling, opening the curtains, brewing tea, feeding the neighbor's cat that had taken to sleeping on their porch. She smiled now. Not always. Not constantly, but more than once a day. It was real earned. June had begun documenting Emma's recovery in her journal. It's not as daily entries anymore, but as letters. Not to Emma, not to Marcus, not even to Sophie, but to herself. Dear June, you are doing better than you think. You will never be who you were before the forest, before the bunker. Maybe you don't need to be. Maybe healing isn't going back. Maybe it's something altogether new. The media storm had quieted by September. Reporters moved on. Another missing person, another cold case solved. Another scandal, but those inside the Morrison house knew the story wasn't over. Healing wasn't a single path. It was a spiderweb of stops and starts, of slips and climbs, shadows and sparks. And Emma had begun to draw new things. People whole. Families. Sometimes a girl standing on a mountaintop with her arms spread wide. Sometimes a tree with roots, so deep they touched the edge of the page. One drawing caught June's breath in her throat. It was the old house. Their house. The windows glowed gold. The trees behind it had eyes. The garden had faces. Sophie stood in the window, waving. Emma had titled it, Everyone Comes Home Eventually. October brought a surprise no one expected. Agent Kessler called again. We found another site. Felt her chest tighten. No victims, Kessler clarified quickly. It wasn't a bunker. More of a safe house, storage space, abandoned. But inside we found tapes. Tapes, June asked cautiously. Recordings, journals. Hours of Daniel talking to the girls, training them, rehearsals for cover stories. One labeled Emma Tester 6. We haven't let the Bureau review all of it yet, I thought. You might want to decide what happens to them. June sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she said, Destroy them. You're sure? They're not his story to tell anymore? Halloween came, and Emma shocked them all. She asked for a costume. Nothing elaborate. Just a simple blue dress and cardboard wings she and June built together from scratch. Wanted to be a bird. Not just any bird. A bluebird. June cried when she said it that night. They walked through the neighborhood, just a few houses. She didn't knock on doors, but she watched other kids in their costumes. Collected a few candies handed over with warm smiles and soft hellos. When they returned home, Emma left 3 pieces of chocolate on the edge of the bench in the sunflower. Garden. For Sophie, she said. June said nothing, just nodded. November came with crisp air and the faintest promise of frost. One afternoon, Emma stood on the porch holding a stack of letters. Can I send them? She asked. June blinked. To whom, Tina?
Ah.
June's chest swelled. They're stories, Emma said. Ones we didn't get to tell each other? Let's mail them today. They drove to the post office in town and dropped the envelope in the box. On the ride home, Emma rolled the window down and let the wind whip her hair across her face. When they reached the driveway, she said, Do you think she'll write back? I think she already has, June replied. That night they found a new envelope in the mailbox. Inside, a photo of 2 trees carved into the same heart. On the back, in Tina's handwriting, still growing. By Thanksgiving, the house had shifted into something that felt almost normal, not like the years before the abduction. That life was long gone, but something sustainable, balanced, true. Marcus cooked. June read aloud from Sophie's favorite. Books. Emma set the table, careful and meticulous. They didn't invite anyone else. It was theirs. At dinner, Emma lifted her glass of cider and said to the ones who waited. June and Marcus repeated it to the ones who waited. In December, something happened that June never expected. She dreamed of Sophie again, not as a ghost, not as a scream, but as a girl. Sitting at the edge of the woods, bare feet swinging, her hair wild with leaves. She turned and grinned. It's okay now, she said. You can go. June woke with tears on her face. Not of grief, but release. The garden froze over by mid-December. The sunflowers bowed their heavy heads, and the tomatoes turned to husks. But no one mourned it because it would return, like the girls had, like the light. June stood in the doorway one morning and watched Emma sketching quietly by the fire. There was color in her cheeks. She didn't look like a girl who'd been kept underground. She looked like a girl who'd climbed out, again and again, and survived. The first snow came in January. It dusted the garden like powdered sugar. It's outlining the brittle sunflowers, the bare stalks. The bench beneath the tree that Sophie never sat on but had somehow made hers anyway. Emma woke early that morning. She stood barefoot on the porch, wrapped in her gray blanket, watching the flakes fall with a kind of reverence. June watched her through the kitchen window, heart caught in her throat. It still felt unreal sometimes. The way Emma now existed freely in the world, the way the house had filled with warmth again, the way even silence between them had grown soft, comforting. Emma turned, caught her mother's gaze, and smiled. Not a flash of a smile, a full one. Lasting, real. 2 weeks later, Tina came to visit it. Was unofficial, unannounced, arranged quietly through Agent Kessler and Mrs. Haskins. She was taller now. Her hair had been cut short, her cheeks rounder, her coat a size too big. She stepped out of the car with a mixture of fear and defiance, one hand tucked deep in her pocket, the other clutching something small and wrapped in tissue paper. Emma came out to meet her. They didn't hug. They didn't say anything at first. They just stood, staring, as if counting each other's breaths. Then Tina said, Your garden looks like a painting, Emma answered. It used to be Sophie's. Tina nodded. I brought something. She held out the tissue-wrapped bundle. Emma unwrapped. It slowly. Inside was a stone, smooth and blue, painted with 2 trees, their roots entangled. Emma blinked back tears. You remembered, Tina's lip quivered. Every day. They spent the afternoon walking through the frozen garden, pointing out sprouts that hadn't yet come, talking softly, not about the bunker, not about Daniel, but about art, books, the color of clouds, what birds meant to them now. June watched from the kitchen, heart full in a way it hadn't been since before. Sophie died. Marcus snapped a photo of the girls sitting, side by side on the porch swing. Neither smiled, but their eyes were alive. Spring arrived again, slowly. Sophie's sunflowers were planted early this year. Wanted to see how tall they could grow if they had more time. She measured each stem weekly, tracked the blooms in her sketchbook. She and Tina now wrote weekly. They had a language of their own. Tree symbols, spirals, bluebirds. It was part code, part poetry. Once, June caught a glimpse of a page and read a line written in Tina's hand. We weren't buried. We were waiting. And now we rise. That summer, June published a book. She didn't set out to. It began as journal entries, then letters, then something more structured. She never wanted it to be a memoir. Not really. So she called it a testament. Title was simple. One sister was buried in the forest, the other lived in a bunker. No one knew existed. It was quiet, honest, full of grief, but also full of light. She told the story, not of Daniel, but of Emma, of Tina, of Sophie, and of the people who didn't give up. It was not a bestseller, but it found the right readers. Emma turned 17 in July. She didn't want a party. It's just a picnic in the woods. Not deep, not near the place where the world had once gone dark. Just far enough to hear the stream, she invited Tina. They sat on a blanket, passing grapes between them, laughing about birds that kept swooping overhead like they were invited. June watched from a distance and thought, we got her back. Not the same, not untouched, but whole. When the girls stood up and walked toward the stream, June saw it again, that flicker of Sophie and Emma's stride, that quiet courage, and something else, too. Survival passed between them like light between trees. The foundation grew. The Sophie Project expanded to 3 states, funded in part by a quiet donor who turned out to be Tina's biological aunt. They opened housing for rescued children with no families to return to, launched programs for trauma recovery, art therapy, education reintegration. June sat on the board. Emma taught art classes quietly in the back room, always with music playing low. She didn't talk about her past. She didn't need to. The kids who walked into that room knew. They saw it in her and they trusted her because she had come from where they had, and she was still here. The last entry in June's journal came one morning in late September. The sun had just crested over the hills. The trees were golden. The porch creaked beneath her as she sat with her tea. Emma was asleep upstairs. Tina had stayed over again, curled in the guest bed with a book still open in her hands. Marcus was in the garden, humming softly as he watered the roots. June opened the notebook and wrote, Day 512. The girls are alive. Not just breathing, living. I used to think grief would hollow me forever, but it didn't. It changed shape. It's made room for something new. Sophie is still with us. In the garden, in the laughter, in the quiet. Emma is not who she was. Neither. M1, but we are growing. Still. Always. This isn't the end. This is home. She closed the notebook, looked out over the land and smiled.